Today on Core Conversations, we have Kara Stewart-Agostino. Kara is an activist and a fitness guru in the Toronto area, and she and some of her colleagues published a fabulous article in a national news magazine that sheds light on the climate of racism in small town Canada. Kara did a masterful job today illustrating hot topics like unconscious bias, systemic racism, and color tone privilege. Enjoy the conversation.
And I've been talking about race and racism, I feel like, all of my life. And I don't know how you separate that from the fitness industry. I just don't quite know how we don't have a mutual conversation about what's happening in people's lives and how it affects them emotionally, physically. You know, when someone walks into the gym and they're processing the latest video that's popped up on the media of violence against Black men and women, the murder of Black men and women. I can't expect them to just compartmentalize that and put it aside, and that it's not going to be impacting how they're going to move through a training session.
Yes.
And I can't pretend that as their trainer that it's not in the back of my mind as well. So seeing these conversations being more open in the fitness industry it's a welcome change, because I feel as though there's just been a few of us in the sort of corners of the industry trying to talk about the impacts of racism on our mental and physical well-being.
And with the landscape of what that looks like in Canada, like we're both in the Greater Toronto area. You're in Hyde Park area. I'm in Mississauga. There's a sense too of it is what it is to a degree, right? Where you want to have a voice, you want to give it space, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago, I had kind of come to accept the fact that this is what this looks like. And even when I vocalize it, it wasn't going to get the airtime that it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Something is different. Something has shifted in the last 4 months where people are talking about it more openly. And I don't feel like I'm just talking into an empty chamber anymore. People are ready to listen.
I feel, as we think about, with George Floyd and that situation, as soon as I look at that, I actually never watched the video. No. Because I was still thinking about the Rodney King video and how momentous that was as the first time that was captured on video what Black people have been feeling their whole lives.
Yes.
And it's just the advent of phones in our pockets that allowed it to come to the forefront. And it took another 20 years for that to happen again and again and again for people to really think that this is actually an issue.
That this is real, that this happens not just once every so often, but this is a regular daily occurrence. I don't watch the videos. How many have there been? It feels like in the last 10 years, there's a different video that comes up every couple of months. I can't watch them. I don't want to watch the murder of another Black man or another Black woman. I don't need to watch it to know that it's real, to know that it's awful and that it happens in this world. And I think there's something really problematic that people need to witness that. They need to see that to believe us when we say our lives are at risk, our bodies are at risk.
Right. What about people like Louis Farrakhan and Malcolm X and people who were just dismissed as extremists when they were saying exactly what we're saying today? You ever see those, there's some clips just floating around where I think Louis Farrakhan was on the Donahue show. Remember Phil Donahue? Remember when I was on TV?
I remember Phil Donahue.
All right. And he was getting blasted by white people and by mainstream Black people who just kind of said, that's true, but you're kind of going over the top with that.
Right.
His rhetoric is tame compared to what we are seeing today from Black people who are actually getting a voice now too. I almost feel like going back and just watching everything that he said, because it's articulated in such a beautiful way and was dismissed in his time.
It was so dismissed. The fact that we see so many white folks saying defund the police now is really, really interesting.
Yes.
And that's not even seen as radical anymore. But you're absolutely right that in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, absolutely anything that was said about Black liberation and what cost Black liberation might need to come at was seen as absolutely radical.
Absolutely radical.
But at the same time, although we're saying it now, I'm afraid that there's a lot of lip service that's being paid to Black Lives Matter. And when it comes down to the action, that's what I'm waiting to see happen.
Yes. Have you seen any action to date that you can give them a C+ for their effort at this point?
Not yet.
Nothing.
I don't think so. I haven't.
Okay.
I mean, so in my neighborhood, there was very sadly in I forget the date. It was at the end of June, though. There was a Black woman who you may have heard the story of Reid. She fell from the balcony of an apartment building that is very like a 10-minute walk from my house. I walk past it all the time to get to High Park, and there were 7 police officers in the apartment building when she fell to her death. We are still waiting for some kind of answers from the SIU as to what happened to her. What happened? Her family called asking for help in a mental health crisis, and 7 police officers showed up. Her family was told to stay in the hallway while they were in the apartment building, and she died. And we don't know still to this day, although there have been multiple media reports, although there's been tons of pressure put on the Toronto PD to say what has happened in this case. Those officers are still. I could walk past those officers today, the ones who are in that apartment building with her.
Yes.
Right. They're still serving. So no, I'm not at a place yet that I feel like we can say, great, we're getting somewhere. I need something more. I'm all about the tangible. I want really tangible, measurable actions, which of course we talk about in fitness, right?
Yes. Right.
I need that in our everyday lives as well.
Right. One of the points that I would celebrate with this movement is seeing what's happening with the school boards. With the Peel Board, the Toronto District School Board, and the third board, I can't remember whichever one it was, they've all dismissed their directors, and there's all 3 Black women running those departments. So there's been enough pressure to get those people who are aiding and abetting in just the racism, anti-Black racism that was happening. They're out, and there's new people in. So that was one spot where I'd say, okay,
I'm with you there. I'm with you there because that representation really matters, right?
Yes.
My son, so I have 2 kids. One, my son is 11, and he's going to a new school next year. The principal is a Black woman, and that was really significant for me. So we're in Toronto District School Board, largest school board in the province, and from my understanding, there are 2 principals in the school board who are Black women.
Yes.
And so he's going to one of them. But I 100% agree with you that seeing that representation for our kids to see Black women in charge and running things, that's important.
Yes, exactly. Because they are running it too. I think, a lot of times in those situations, when we're looking for those changes to happen, organizations will look inside and say, well, who are the Black people that are already here, that understand the game, who know how to just tiptoe around certain issues? We'll put them in because there are safe Black people. And that actually isn't diversity.
No, 100%. It's not diversity. That's what I guess we need to see next is because, who is it that said, not all my skin folk are my kinfolk. I think, oh gosh.
Good word. Who said that? I can't remember.
Oh, I think it was it Zora Neale Hurston, perhaps? But not all my skin folk are my kinfolk is one of those really significant things that I remind myself of. You know, let's see what kind of enactments these women now put into place, these leaders now put into place to upset the status quo in the school boards.
Right. And it has to be done in such a way that, like fitness, you can't just do a keto diet and be perfect, right? Like,
that's right.
How do we make sustainable, long-term, permanent, lasting?
Oh, you're talking my language now.
Change.
That's right. Yes, sustainable change. And I'm not going to pretend that I have the answers and know what it takes to change systems that have been in place in these school boards for decades,
since inception.
Were these systems ever really made for Black students? So I don't know how, I can't remember, you told me how old your kids are, but they're a little bit older than mine, I think.
One just graduated, 17, stepdaughter 16, my second son's 14, and my stepson 13.
So you've been working your way through these systems a lot longer than I have.
Can I tell you, Kara, I have had a few run-ins with administrators, and that, like I was saying before, I wasn't very vocal about the whole racism thing because I just felt like I'll set my examples, I'll do my thing where I can. But I'll tell you one story that happened with me with my son, where he was identified and it was a blatant racist comment and discrimination against him. And so I called the school, set an appointment, and I knew that going to the school, that the way that I presented myself initially would dictate how the situation was going to go.
Yeah.
So I went, put a suit on, put a jacket on. I have a master's degree. I walked in with the perception of being an educated Black man in my attire,
right,
to talk about a situation with my son. Or I could have came in my cutoff and my Jordans and just flipped chairs, as I was so absolutely mad at what had happened. But I knew that if I didn't present in a certain way, I wouldn't be heard.
Right. So this might not surprise you that I am the co-chair of the equity committee at my kids' school.
Shocked. Yes.
Yes. Right. But I'm very aware of that we have had a number of incidents at my kids' school, and their school only goes up to grade 6, K to 6. So we're dealing with some of the youngest, right? And there have been a number of incidents of racism at the school over the years, which is why I actually was the one who put forward the idea that we needed to have an equity committee and decide to participate on it. But when I know we're having a parent council meeting where we'll be talking about racism that has happened in the school, I'm very aware my neighborhood has a very low demographic of people of color. So I'm very aware that when I step into the room, I'm potentially going to be the only person of color in that room.
Yes.
And that the angry Black woman moniker could be applied to me very quickly.
Yes.
And I debate with myself, do I want to try and tone myself down, right? And talk in a, more measured, calm way, which I think I sometimes do. Or do I want to embrace the anger? Because I am angry, and I am Black, and I am a woman. So those things are true.
Right. Yes.
Right. And I think sometimes folks need to see the anger and the hurt that goes along with it to understand that this, I'm not just ruffling feathers and stirring waters, for some kind of academic pursuit of, talking about racism, that this is real and this affects our community and it affects how our kids experience their school community.
Absolutely. Maybe it's my own selfish desire to be heard when I'm angry. being totally honest, I think that's why I present in that way, because yes,
Yeah.
I am angry, but if I'm angry and like I said, if I'm just going there just yelling and making a big scene, I'm not going to affect the change I want.
Well, and I do think there's a difference between like how an angry black man is perceived and me who has a lighter complexion as well. Yes. Right? Like there's a certain privilege that I get to walk through this world with, having, being biracial. Actually, I think the world mostly sees me as black, and I definitely embrace that, my blackness, but I do have a lighter complexion that does give me certain privileges that others don't have.
Yes. That Tracy Moore had a great post about that, about color, was it color tone privilege she phrased it as?
I don't know.
But she puts it, but that's exactly it, right? Like in that, it totally plays into that. We think about white privilege, but within the black community, the lighter your skin tone, the more opportunities that you get.
That's right. That's right.
My sister sees that too when in acting, when she was, you get casting calls and you walk in the room, they're looking for a person of diversity. The pretty light skinned girl is going to get the gig, and the darker skinned girl is going to get passed over. And that's, they start to just accept the fact that that's how it is.
That's how it is. So I go with my mom to get pedicures when we're not in COVID time. My mom and I will go together, and she's got her place, her spot that she likes. And I had a spot that I used to like. So I took my mom.
Past tense.
Yeah, past tense. Took my mom and my daughter as well to get all done up. And this happened 2 times before we decided we knew what was going on. So we're sitting side by side. Different folks are working on our feet, our toes. Mm-hmm. And somehow my mom's done way before I am. And the first time we think, okay, this is odd. Yes. The second time, and she sort of felt like, it was an okay pedicure, but there's still a little bit of rough.
Yes.
The second time we went, she was told that if she wanted she asked, she said, don't you like scrub the feet, and sort of scrub the legs? And they said, well, if you want that, you have to pay extra. I didn't have to pay extra for the exact. I asked other folks who go there, they never had to pay extra for the same thing. My mom's complexion is a little bit darker than yours. Yes. I think we can put 2 to 2 together and figure out why she had to pay a little extra. Wow. And we're sitting side by side, and I'm her child. Right.
Right. Yes. And this isn't like the far south. Like we're talking Toronto.
We're talking about a neighborhood that usually votes either Liberal or NDP.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So a neighborhood that considers itself quite progressive. Mm-hmm. Right. So,
but not that progressive.
Which is what that article of mine, that's how we kind of got connected. I shouldn't say mine, that I was a co-author on. That's what in essence what that article was about. It's about the neighborhoods even the neighborhoods we think of as being progressive, racism is still happening here. It's happening, in every community. Let's not fool ourselves. Let's be able to name it, identify it, and figure out our way forward together.
Can you talk about, is it your article about the hardware store?
So that's sort of what got it started.
Okay.
Right. So there's a hardware store in our neighborhood that put up an All Lives Matter sign on their billboard. So we're not talking about a chalkboard. We're talking about the billboard with the stencils where you got to take out each little letter and put it up, right?
So they intentionally put it up there, is what you're saying.
Like you got to find multiple
time, a ladder. Yeah.
You gotta line them up.
Right.
So you're like, there's some thought that goes into this one.
Right.
So the owner was someone took a picture, went onto Facebook very quickly. They were getting a lot of criticism, and the owner put up an apology the next day that I feel like we see a lot of these apologies right now that are very thin, claiming that he put the sign up in ignorance. So he took it down and he put Black Lives Matter back up, which, you know, I don't really want you to put Black Lives Matter back up right away. I want you to sit with it. I need you to learn and understand why all lives matter is a problem, why that is a racist statement, right? Black Lives Matter, sorry, all lives matter has only ever been said in reaction to all lives matter. So these friends and I, excuse me, we got together. We were kind of helping each other through, realizing that this was a store we had all shopped in. We'd all walked through. This is our neighborhood. You know, this is a place that now we don't feel comfortable walking in with our families because we don't know. We don't know. And that definitely what spurred a lot of conversations for us. But we didn't want the article to just be about, here's how we've experienced racism, or here's why this one business owner is a problem. We wanted to expand it and have some analysis of our experiences of racism so that we can move on. Just like we were talking about, I don't watch the videos of Black men being killed by police or Black women. Right. You know, there's sort of been a language of that being like a racism porn. You know, I don't need to view that, and we didn't want our article to be that. So we tried to move into a larger Canadian context. Most of us have lived in the prairies as well as Toronto, and demonstrate that no matter where we've lived, we've experienced this kind of racism. This looks familiar.
Yes. Can you talk about the phrase or the term unconscious bias?
So I don't think that I can speak to that one as clearly as one of the co-authors would be able to, but I'll try to. So it's the way I understand unconscious bias is where you're not even aware of the bias that you have towards people of color, towards women, towards Indigenous people, that it is that insidious sort of assumption that's in your head that, you know, you're walking down the street and you see a Black man coming towards you, and so you cross the street automatically. You don't think of yourself as someone who is racist, but you have a bias that is unconscious, that you think, I'm going to be safer if I cross the street. That you walk past someone, an Indigenous person who maybe is stumbling, and you assume that they are intoxicated. Not that maybe their blood sugar is low, right? Or anything it could be. So that those assumptions that we automatically make about people based on race.
Yeah, that's good. And out of that, people start to use that as an excuse as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do you find, what are you thinking there? You've got an idea, I can tell.
Well, I know. You already know what's going there. Well, people use it as an excuse for comments that they make in social media or for things that are said or their actions. It's almost like they fall back on that as their excuse, but then they use that excuse again and again and again.
Yeah.
But psychologically, if it's your unconscious bias and I bring it to your attention, now it's your conscious bias, and you can't call it your unconscious bias anymore.
You can't call it your unconscious bias anymore. That's right. And, you know, that's part of what I talk about in my section of the article, and talking about, like, okay, how many, like, yes, we all make mistakes, but at some point we've got to be able to own up to those mistakes. We've got to be able to name them for what they are. And that those mistakes are coming from a racist place.
Yes. And that racist place too, this is one of the things I've been talking a lot about recently, is institutional racism or systemic racism versus you as a racist person. You know, and when we talk about those unconscious biases and all those different things, I've been having some conversations of late with people where I've had to explain to them, is like, I don't personally think that you are a racist, but the organization that you work for is part of a system that is racist. And you can do as much as you want to promote Black people, but the reality is that historically there has never been a person in leadership that is a person of color. This never happens. These people are always passed over. This has never been mentioned. Like, I mean, I can just list off thing after thing after thing after thing that where you work is like that. The the organization that owns the organization is like that. The chairman at the top of the board and his board of directors all white.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So you and I have a great dialogue, and we can have this safe conversation. You can learn and grow, but you also have to recognize that this is systemic or institutional racism where you live.
That's right. That's right. So bring it back to fitness for a second.
Yes.
When I get my CanFit Pro magazine,
right,
in the mail every month, who's on the cover? Mm-hmm. Who's featured in the great influencers or the women to follow? If you do a quick Google search, I'm sure you could see on the images, it's usually a cover photo that's filled with white women and one black woman.
Yes.
And never mind where are the Muslim leaders? Where are the indigenous fitness instructors?
Right.
They're not being represented, right? And where are the gyms in the communities that are predominantly Black and brown communities?
Yes.
My mom lives sort of Jane and Lawrence, predominantly Black neighborhood. There aren't any big box gyms around there. To find a standalone bank that's not like a Cash Money or a Western Union is very hard to find. These are the systemic issues that are impacting our communities, right?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And even with the CanFit Pro, I was on the cover in like 2005, 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I was and really, like, truth be known, is because I was training the editor of the magazine.
Okay.
So, and that's the point I'm making with that is that's an example of these things where unless you know someone, you're on the inside, you don't have a chance of being identified or noticed for your just plain skill set.
That's right.
For the things for your impact, all these different things. And that's the conversation I was having with this gentleman is like, that's a perfect example of systemic racism. You're not allowing representation for the amazing, talented, gifted people that don't look like you.
That's right. I was looking at, just preparing for this talk last night, I wanted to just take a look. Okay, if I Google Canadian fitness influencers, what do I get? Yeah. So there's an article in one of the magazines, may have been Optimized. I think it was Best Health, actually. I think it was Best Health. And they had in the description of one of the Black female fitness instructors, which out of 10, there's one. Again, there's a theme here.
Yes.
They talked about how her Jamaican accent is just so lovely to listen to. It's got this lovely lilt that you could listen to it all day long. And I just thought, you're not talking about anyone else's accent here.
No,
or
exactly.
Way of speech, But that's what you've got to bring that up. You've got to highlight something that accent that is different about her.
Right.
It's you're not talking about her fitness acumen. You're not talking about how she coaches, how she trains. You're talking about her accent.
Her accent. Does that, in your mind, qualify as a microaggression?
Ooh, good one. Yes.
Do you want to think about that some more?
Definitely falls into that. I think unconscious bias. I think when whoever was writing that, you thought that was just a nice thing to say, and didn't realize that is just playing into a racialization of this person.
Absolutely. And just a diminishing of their skills and education and investment and passion for the community.
100%
maddens me to see that happen.
Yes.
Let's see here. There's a comment here from, and it's the white background. I can barely read what she
So
says.
hard to read it.
It's a struggle to find prominent non-white influencers in the fitness space. Google algorithm also does not help much, even when you are intentional in your search.
I totally agree with that. You have to really search to know who to follow, who to find and follow.
Right.
I mean, again, in that same article, one of the influencers is a boxing coach, and I can tell you one of the best boxing coaches in Toronto in Canada is a Black woman named Steph Iron Lioness, and she wasn't mentioned. She's got a fabulous Instagram page. She's incredibly creative, and she knows her stuff.
Yes.
And is someone who should have absolutely been featured there.
Oh, absolutely. There's like, I mean, that's why I do these core conversations, right? I mean, there are so many lesser known superheroes, and I've used that analogy in the past. I'll say it now just for the sake of the soundbite. There's a book that I bought for my sons, the Marvel Encyclopedia of Heroes.
Okay.
Right. So they're big time into Marvel. So this book is all these different heroes, and you know your Supermans and your Spider-Mans and all those. But this book has 1,200 heroes in it.
Wow.
1,200. And I use that analogy to talk about the Pilates industry and say that we know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names or well-known people that are at every conference, are in every poster on every magazine. But then there's also these other 1,200 superheroes that are also saving the world that you don't know as much about.
That's right.
Right. And that's why we do this. And I consider you one of those superheroes. Like, I had not heard of you until I saw this article and I saw other people following you. It's like, who is she? Like, I'm talking to people from Denmark, and like, there's someone in Toronto I haven't had on the show yet.
That's so nice of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're doing it.
Thank you. Can I tell you a little bit about my 30-30 class that I started?
In the 60 minutes left? Yeah, it's so crazy how fast. Please.
How have we flown past that?
Yeah.
So I was feeling a lot when George Floyd died and when Regis Krasinski died. And I was finding it really hard to keep teaching, even though it's through a virtual platform, without showing any of that pain. And there was so much happening on social media, right? That we had the Blackout Tuesday, and we had a week of folks reposting things from various Black activists. I was feeling a lot, and I knew, and my friends were feeling a lot. And I said, we need a space where we can talk about this. But for me, I also need to get some of that energy out. Some of that, my way of dealing with some of those feelings is to move my body.
Okay.
And I need exercise. It's part of my, so I'm getting text messages here. It's part of my, mental health strategy.
Yes, that's your release. That's your cathartic move.
That's right. And I've always wanted to have some kind of a space where we can move and then we can talk. So I started this 30-30 class. And the idea, so it's called 30-30 Strong. And we do a 30-minute workout. It's a free class every week. And after the workout, we talk. And I post a different question each week to sort of guide us through the conversation. And I have to tell you, the feedback has been amazing. The conversations have been absolutely rewarding and incredible.
Sounds so life-giving.
It is. I think about the conversations that we have throughout the entire week. It doesn't leave me. It stays with me. And these are not just folks who are my friends. Somehow it has spread its tentacles across Toronto. And I'm getting folks from, all parts of the East End, all parts of the city. And the sharing that goes on is amazing. People are so open and honest about what they're feeling. And we've had some mic drop moments. We've had some tears. It's just been a really beautiful thing. So, that's one of the things I'm really excited about now, and seeing how that keeps growing and moving forward.
My friend Sonia Herbert
Yes.
is she's an activist, and one of the lines that she said in the past is that everybody is an activist, and that is one of the ways that you are an activist when you create a safe space for people to come, strangers to come together and to move and to share and to find life. That is activism.
I feel that, to me, building community is that's my strong suit. That's where I thrive, is bringing people together and building communities together. It's a lot of what my company is about, is growing together and getting stronger together. So it felt like it has felt, yeah, it has absolutely felt life-giving and like a no-brainer that this is what this part of my life needs. My friends of color, we need this space to be able to talk openly in a safe space without having to explain certain things. You know, it's not that my white friends don't create safe spaces to talk, but there's things you have to explain.
Yes.
Right? So to be able to be safe and not have to explain those extra details and just talk, man, it's great.
That is so good. Best kept secret in Toronto.
Hopefully not any longer.
Right? Well, that's what I hope too. Exactly. And you know what though? I mean, we actually didn't talk fitness. Like yesterday, I had Jason Martin on, super smart technical fitness guy, and that's important. But at the same time, who we are behind our personal trainer banner, I think it's that much more important.
I think of my clients as my friends. And I think because I am very honest and genuine about who I am on social media and on my website and whatever other space, and when people come into classes, I don't try and be anybody else. You know, the way we're talking here, a lot of times we have similar conversations in my classes. You know, while in between the sets and the reps, we have these conversations. And I think that has allowed me to form a client base and a community of like-minded people.
Yes, you know, absolutely.
So I think of my clients in a lot of ways as my friends. I've got the best clients in the world.
Yes, I feel like that too. My acquaintances become friends. My friends become family.
Yes, absolutely.
In closing here, as I was on your site earlier, you talked about your philosophies, your KSA philosophies of knowledge, strength, and action.
Yes.
Can you just unpack that?
So that is, I feel like we could go two ways with that. Okay, so we could stay in the very fitness space. We could say, okay, we learn about motions and movements, and we learn about form, and then we take that and we move into strength. We add load, and then the action is our putting the workout program together. But of course, now that we've had a conversation, you probably realize that for me, it's more than just that, right?
Yes.
And the knowledge is, so I'm a lifelong learner. We're always learning. We're always growing. And that knowledge helps us get stronger, more confident. We feel more empowered. And then we can take that knowledge and that sense of strength that we now have from the knowledge to be able to move into action. And those actual pieces start to fall together of how can I take what I know and this confidence I have and put it to good use. And it's a cycle. For me, it's a real cycle. Constantly learning, growing better, stronger, and then putting that back into action.
Yes. And you also mentioned commitment under the action piece as well.
Yes. So we were talking about, do I give everyone a C+? We've got to have a commitment to it. There's a lot of lip service that's easy to pay, right? You know, maybe you start working with a client and they say, okay, you know, I'm going to commit to working out 3 times a week. Right. But if they actually commit to that? So you've got to really commit to your workout piece. But again, we make that into the larger life piece. We need those actions to be measurable and accountable, right?
Yes.
We've got to be able to say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to get there. And I'm here to work with my clients to help them on that part. I'll help them build the knowledge. I'll help them build the strength, but I'm also going to stand beside you as we work through that action.
Yes. That is amazing.
Yeah, that's me.
There you go. on every level, that's a perfect snapshot of all you do and who you are. Yeah. So cool.
Thank you.
Kara, so thanks so much for joining me today.
This has been great. I've really enjoyed this. Thanks so much, Martin.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Core Conversations. This organic platform has been made possible by amazing people like yourself. So if you're a Pilates instructor or a movement specialist of some kind and you want to be a guest, please message me. If you're in some other field and the messages just resonate with you, message me. I'd love to have you on. All of our messages connect, and for some reason, they all help us in this battle. We're all in this game together, so I'd love to hear from you. Let your words be life to someone else. Check out our website, personalvictory.ca. Click the Core Conversations page to see who our upcoming guests are, and I will see you next time on Core Conversations.